Hey everyone, happy Monday. Welcome to the Change Book Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Harvick, and as you know, every Monday we bring you an amazing author, and today is no different. We have Renee Vardouniotis here with us. And Renee, that was a hard one. I've been practicing on that, so I hope I didn't butcher it too much. But welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. I'm so grateful for you being here. So I want you to tell me, why did you choose the Change Book?
So I think the name of it really speaks to what we should be doing as humans all the time. When people say you've changed, well, we're supposed to evolve. We're supposed to, even take on a different opinion than we had before. And it's okay. Where we live in this society that glorifies sticking to your guns, even if you don't necessarily agree with it anymore, or, I feel like a lot of times growth is not welcomed by people who aren't interested in growing. So if we compile a book about change, it's, very powerful, I think. And I think I've changed a lot, especially over the past 5 years. So for me, it's important to get it out there that it is okay to change. It is okay to leave things that aren't serving you. It is okay to start a new regimen where before you used to say, I'm never going to do that, and do it, because that's what we're meant to do as humans. We're supposed to change. We're not supposed to say the same.
Absolutely. And I love that explanation so much. And for me, I look back, I've changed many, many, many times. You have to morph during life, from teenager to preteen, to your career era, to the mom era. I mean, for me, I'm in a constant state of change. And I've noticed just recently, I felt like I've gone back into my cocoon, because I don't know exactly when or where, but I feel mine coming on. And I know you work a lot with mindset. So tell us how changing plays into mindset.
Oh, it's everything.
Oh, tell us. Do tell.
It's everything. So as we know, we have different types of mindsets, right? We have a money mindset. We have a health mindset. We have relationship mindset. But really the most important mindset we could ever have is a growth mindset. So being able to discover things about yourself. I mean, I'm in my mid 40s and I'll discover something new about myself every, couple weeks that I never knew about myself before. And I always like to say I love change, even though a lot of people don't like it. I think, moving into a new era of your life is fun. Sometimes it's painful, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, if you using that metaphor of the cocoon, I mean, if you think about a caterpillar going into that cocoon and literally melting into nothing and then springing out as this beautiful butterfly, it's really a metaphor for life. Sometimes we have to go through dark things in order to become the best version of ourselves. And
yes,
I've gone through those things, and, and I'm young in that sense where like, there's going to be a lifetime of heartache. Unfortunately, people pass away and illnesses happen and friendships dissipate and divorces happen and things like that around me. I mean, not personally for me with divorce. I'm still happily married 20 years.
Yay, so congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And I have 2 awesome kids. And I really feel like a lot of this internal work I've been doing is for them. It's for my husband. It's for my children. And even though they might not understand it at first, it's really just the modeling of it that I'm starting to see it kind of spread its beautiful angel dust on all the people that are around me. And that is really what I feel like my purpose is. And that's to let other people know that they can shine and not to dim themselves for others. And especially with my son and my daughter. My son's a 16-year-old now. So he's going through, the high school and the driving and, so many changes, but it's a good thing. Everyone's
Absolutely.
like, oh no, my baby's driving. And I say it like that because I can't believe he's 16, but I want him to drive. I want him to take a car and take himself places. It's going to be scary.
It's learning independence. It's learning independence. And that's one of the processes that comes with being a mom, is watching that kid get in that car and drive away. And that mother heart's like beating out of your chest.
Yes.
But you know, that's part of their journey.
It is. And we all did it. You know, it's funny because we all learned and we were all doing it, and we had to learn somehow. And I think that's my metaphor for life, is that we're never going to be good at things at first, but when we have persistence in our drive and our will and consistency, which is huge, we can really be, do, or have anything. And it's a matter of believing in yourself, believing in your skills, and the growth mindset part of it is understanding that maybe you weren't born a country singer, but you can become one.
Right.
It's,
absolutely.
you know, our innate and inherent gifts aren't set in stone like most people think. And yeah. So I think that's how mindset, you know, has a powerful influence on change, because if you don't want to change, you're not going to change. So,
and you know what, that's such a true statement. And one of the things you said was about facing the darkness of self. And you've obviously done it. I've had to do it. And it wasn't the most pleasant thing I went through, to look at myself and say, you know what, you were part of the problem. You absolutely were part of the problem. And you can only see it, to me, I could only see it when I looked backwards. You know, I could see, I'm like, oh gosh, you know, look, but the learning that comes out of that self-assessment, how important is that to mindset?
Oh, these I can
right.
Time do you have? We're going to be on here for a while.
That's okay. These are important things.
Yes. So I think self-awareness is number one. So if we're not aware that we're behaving a certain way, or we're not aware that certain possibilities are available to us, we're just going to be who we are and stay the same all the time. So I think once we have awareness of who we are, what we want, and a lot of times that has, you know, we need to write these things down, because we're not sitting around thinking about it. But when you actually concentrate and write down the things that you want, oftentimes they will come to fruition because you set a goal. And I think a lot of times our educational system is not really teaching us to do that. So, which was a huge driving force and why I started, you know, just even within the work within me, all I wanted to do was spread it all, you know, yell it from the mountains, because it changed me so much, that for the better. And
yes.
And I think especially as a mother, you know, you're constantly wondering if you're doing the right things. And are you parenting the right way? Are you feeding your kids right? I mean, there's so many pressures as a mom, that I think the best gift we could ever give to our kids is doing the work in ourselves and developing ourselves, because in doing that, we're showing them, because they don't listen to our advice, right? They're going to watch what we're doing and they're going to copy it like a photocopier.
Oh, so, if people could realize just that one thing, that your children are always watching. And you know, for me, the things that they emulate now were from the heart, you know, of being of service or kindness. Because I always said kindness is free, but I didn't just say it, I showed it. And I noticed them. I think it just embeds in their subconscious. What do you think about
100%. That? Anything that we repeat over and over, that's how we learn everything. Honestly, you know, think about it. You could say your ABCs right now. You know, it doesn't matter where you are. You could be in China and standing on your head and say your ABCs. Like, it's going, you know, it's just ingrained in there. It's a program in there. So once we realize that through the power of repetition, that we can change habits, that we can habit stack. If something you don't like to do, well, then pair it with something you really love to do. I mean, there's little tricks that are free and easy, and you know, you don't have to spend money to implement these things, but it has to come from a place of curiosity and want. You know, I want to be the best version of myself. I want to get better every day. I want to seek out new places to go, hang out with new people, and a lot of people are open to that. So I think by doing that myself, I see it in my children. My kids are very easily adjusted to new situations. And I think it's because they've seen me do it. And
I agree. I
I don't
agree.
fear it. I don't fear it at all. It's actually fun for me to meet new people like you and the gyms and all the people that, you know, that I'm going to meet when I'm marketing and promoting this book.
I think to have your children branch out and see a whole world, not just a world that they're living in, is so important. Because I used to, with my younger, well, both kids actually, but my youngest daughter during COVID in 2020, you know, instead of being housebound, we went on adventures. And of course, they had to be pretty much outdoors to places, you know, that you couldn't really shut down. And I always called her my adventure partner, so much that she got a little tattoo on her side.
Aww.
But yeah, but I think that's so wonderful that, like you said, when they see you, they emulate. And so now this kid she's 22. I think she's been to 6 countries. One was a solo journey. And I will never forget, she was so scared because she had met some friends that invited her to Ireland for 2 weeks. And I said, girlfriend, you get to stay in their houses and really find out what it is. I said, if you do it once, you've stepped over the fear.
Yep.
And you can do it again and again and again. And I know that you work with teens. Do you find fear in teens these days, or do you find more? Okay.
Yes, they fear failure. They fear judgment. They fear that they're not up to speed with what they're seeing their friends do on the social media channels. Their fear is a little different than I think our fears as the youth, because they've been presented with a whole world that we didn't know anything about when we were that age. We couldn't literally find what anyone is doing and know their location and who they're with. I mean, it's like they have little GPSs on themselves at all times. And that's how they are growing up. We can't fight it because this is just the way it is, but we have to adjust and we have to adapt as parents, as adults, as those who were born, you know, in the 1900s. We have to really embrace it, because fighting it is going to get us nowhere, but frustrated.
Absolutely.
And because it is what it is. I mean, this is kind of the evolution of life. And think about the changes that our parents had to deal with when we were young. They didn't experience the same things we did. So if you look at it that way, it makes total sense. Like, just like everything else, change is important. It's important now that we have all of this technology and AI and all of these wonderful tools to use. We have to learn to navigate them and be able to help our children navigate them in the most healthy way. So
absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely.
Fear is on the forefront, but the fear that they have is more about what's he going to think? What's she going to do? It's fear of I'm not good enough. And their self-worth is at stake here. And it's really important that we begin to have a paradigm shift in what we're teaching our kids, because the same curriculum's being taught in school that I was taught, that you were taught, that our grandparents were taught. But life is different now. And it's really so important to adjust to the times.
Yes. And do you think you talk about school, and I think there's so much conditioning in school from the time they start, you know, they're judged, they have to raise their hand to do things, they need permission. So they're kind of conditioned, like, just to obey. And so,
I'm sorry.
Do you see that?
Oh my gosh. The first thing that happens in a school is if you're wrong, if you make a mistake, it's bad.
I know. And that's just learning. How do you learn without mistakes? I mean, I look back and I'm like, I was one big mistake. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I think about the principle of our education system, it's based on memorization and regurgitation of information that has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with the past or, history, science, things like that. And they're all important to learn. But if our kids don't know who they are, what's the point in teaching them all that stuff? Like the fundamental education needs to be mindset. right? So
Oh,
yeah,
I
we have to
so agree with
relearn
you.
all this stuff. Like it is what it is. Like the education system as a whole is going to be a huge mountain to move because of
Yeah.
just the archaic systems that they have in place. But if we're able to bridge what our kids are learning in school with outside education, supplemental education, mindset education, they're going to do better in school. They're not going to have the fears in school. If they get something wrong, they'll say, well, this grade doesn't, is not a predictor of what I'm able to do. All it is a predictor of what I learned 2 weeks ago. So, and it's just, it fires me up thinking about that. This is what we call education.
Absolutely. And my daughter talks about that. She's in her last semester in college. She goes, Mom, I'm never going to use like 90% of the stuff that I paid for,
Nope.
that we paid. So you look at it, you're like, what is it? None of it's real life.
No.
The minute our kids step out the door into a real world, I don't think they're prepared. Do you?
Absolutely not. I wasn't. I mean, I went through grad school. I'm a speech therapist by trade. I didn't use a lot of the stuff that I learned, from the books. It's experiential. You have to get the experience in order to learn. So I remember the first child I had that had a severe stutter, and I didn't know how to treat him because in 10 years, I had never had a severe stutterer. So the book learning I learned at NYU wasn't going to help me in that moment. I had to do research, and I had to network with other speech therapists to see the best, form of therapy for him. Because
Wow.
I wasn't going to go back into my textbooks and be like, stuttering, how do I do this? Like, no, it has to be you network with people that have done it or have an expertise in it, or you Google it and you read about it and you teach yourself. I mean, that's really what we're doing anymore, is teaching ourselves. Google is teaching yourself. AI is teaching yourself. We are our own teachers.
Right. And I've learned just since the computer and the Google and the AI, I have expanded my critical thinking immensely.
Mm-hmm.
So people that say, I'm so glad I didn't grow up in, blah, 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 in an era where I had to do this or do that. It's like, you have no idea. And for me, I am a lifelong learner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love to learn. And so I think that's so important. But I'm really curious, I'm going back to the stuttering. What is the root cause of stuttering usually?
So it's definitely for this particular child, and he's part of my story when I speak on stages, is because once I started working on his mindset, his stutter dissipated. And his stutter was acute, meaning it very sudden onset from the birth of his little brother. So trauma oftentimes causes disfluency in kids, adults as well. You can go through a traumatic experience and it could change your wiring and make it really hard to have that connection between your brain and your articulatory, function in your mouth. So I think there's a couple different reasons for that. For that type of speech disorder, is it could be hereditary from your heritage.
Okay.
Someone else stutters in your family, your chances being a stutterer are higher. Which is like really,
I never knew that. That's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and they don't. I haven't done recent research, but I know the research I did in the past, it seemed to be a toss up between, are they emulating the human that is stuttering, and that's why they stutter, or is it the wiring? And a lot of times the kids that have disfluency, there's some kind of emotional component to it. There's some kind of trauma, and when I say trauma, it doesn't need to be major life and death stuff. It could just be the birth of a sibling.
And see, that's what people don't understand. What you deem trauma, someone else, takes it on, where you're like, oh, that's not trauma. You just can't judge other people.
And your trauma is not my trauma, and my trauma is not your trauma. And if my trauma was that my little brother was born and it caused me a stutter, well, it's a fact. It's not in your opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
This child was a fully fluent student before his brother was born. So what else caused it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting.
It is really interesting. But taking it back to, a huge part of my mission is allowing our kids and our teens to know that they are capable, and not guiding them down a path where we're saying, well, this is just the way it is. You can't change.
Yeah, I heard that in my era, and it's like, and also do as I say, not as I do.
Oh.
You've heard that too, right?
Oh, it's the worst. And it's funny because a lot of us as adults are unwiring and rewiring ourselves from things that we were raised with.
Absolutely.
Good, bad, indifferent. We all were raised by humans that didn't necessarily know how to train us the way we wanted to be. I mean, we were programmed by people that we didn't even have a choice of what they were putting in there.
Yeah.
So once we make the decision that we want to change it, we can.
I know. Isn't that such a freedom?
Oh,
that's to finally realize you can. I get to do this. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things you talk about in your bio is emotional empowerment. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about right now. We do have the ability to change. Can you expound on emotional empowerment for us?
Absolutely. So coming from a generation, and not necessarily my own family, but hearing people say, boys don't cry, or you're not depressed, just smile and be happy. And that is a completely ineffective way of teaching our children that we are humans and we experience a full spectrum of emotions. And to not shoot them down, because and when we're doing that, we're showing our kids that we don't value how they're feeling. And that just spirals and snowballs into distrust and feeling of unworthiness and embarrassment for feeling a certain way. The trick that we need to be doing with our kids when they're feeling a certain type of way is have them sit in it and feel it, but then give them the tools to move on and change the narrative for them. So, and some of it's chemical and we can't control it, as far as people, I'm not minimizing depression or anything like that. But when we sit there and do, that toxic positivity, like be positive, be great, blah, 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 it has to be followed with an action that can cause that to happen for somebody. So
right.
By someone saying, be positive. Okay, well, give me some steps. How can I change my negative thinking into positive, and do it in a way where I feel like I'm allowed to feel this negativity, but not sit in it too long that it really affects you, because the more you're thinking negative thoughts, the more you're reprogramming your mind to think negative thoughts. So switching that narrative is so important. And it empowers our kids to accept their emotions, to accept how they're feeling, but not to wallow in it forever. Something that is so important is their emotional intelligence. And that is not taught in school, where we focus on IQ at school. EQ is where, we build really strong and resilient humans.
Right. And elevate ourselves. And I love that you said to sit in it, not forever, but just to understand the why behind it, because it's only if you understand that you can change. You can do that little paradigm shift. And we're not teaching that,
Nope.
And I can remember, my gosh, I think my daughter was a freshman and I found the suicide hotline card in her room. And you think this mother, and because they're even though they look almost like adults, their minds don't have the capacity to compartmentalize and figure out, why do I have this? What is making me, so it's a scary time I see out there for kids. Still, you think we have so much information in our hands, but yet our school system isn't really following it as quickly as I think it should.
No, they are, century behind.
A century. Isn't that's scary, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
That's really scary.
It is scary, but honestly, Nicole, it's purposeful. They don't want to change.
Why do you think they don't want to change?
Because they don't want little Elon Musks running around.
The mighty Space Force that,
They don't
true.
want people to understand. And this is kind of like, yikes to say this, but they don't want us to grow in the way where we can take over the world.
They want to control us. It's all
about control. And I know it's controversial to say, but if you really think about it, and I
raise your hand to go to the bathroom. Are you kidding me?
I know. It's sit in your seat, don't move, sit in your seat. If you look out the window, you have ADHD. It's so
here's a pill.
Yeah, it's so when you have awareness like we do, we see it like night and day.
It's so clear.
So clear. It's not gray area. It's black and white. Like that is exactly what's happening. So a part of me, spreading how I've changed and what I've learned, and even, what I've written in this book is like a little Bible of how to think and grow and be the best version of yourself with topics that are not taught in school. Yeah, but are hugely fundamental and important. And without this knowledge, we can fall victim to this, archaic system that we have in place, especially in America, where our kids aren't learning trades. Trades should be in high school. It should be, okay, do you like woodwork? All right, why don't you pick a curriculum that's based on that? We just don't have the tools for them. And so it's our responsibility to provide those.
I couldn't agree more. And I'll tell you, one of the things I see are everyone putting someone down because they don't have that college education.
Oh,
well, that is not for everyone. I have one daughter that it was not for. I have one daughter that is defined by it. And that's okay either way. But like you said, we need people in the trade. We need all kinds of people.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean because you've been given a set of things to read and memorize and regurgitate does not mean you're smarter than someone.
No. And why isn't this not a thing? Why are people not looking at that and saying this is ridiculous?
Girl, I could talk about this for days with you. I'm telling you, because you are, literally verbatim the things that I have seen, I have talked about, and it's some will listen and dismiss, some will listen and think about it, and some will be like, man, I've been thinking this for so long.
Exactly, but no one knows what to do about it because it's so huge. It's the biggest mountain in the world to move.
Yeah,
so,
it is.
But when you said about the college education, I have changed my viewpoint on that vastly in the past 5 years. I used to say, oh, they don't have a degree. How are they going to get a job? I mean, think how stupid that sounds.
But they've conditioned you to think that.
I know, but yes, exactly. But the fact that is a basis on someone's capability or ability to be a great asset to a company is bonkers.
Yeah, it really is. I love this conversation so much. I do. And I know we're coming to the end, but I need you to tell me about your Mighty Minds Academy, because I love that title, Mighty Minds. Tell me what you have developed, what they do. I want to hear all about that.
So my programs I'm actually in the middle of another change. So my Mighty Minds programs are all online, and finding that in this era of post, COVID, people are more willing and actually want in-person events, programs, things like that. So I'm slowly kind of morphing into a new company. I'm not abandoning Mighty Minds, but I'm really excited about what's going to happen in 2025 in person with teenagers. And
Ooh.
Yes. And so utilizing this material that I've developed over the past, we're going on 3 years now of really, really powerful program development and creation and evolution. It's all been an evolution. I left full-time speech therapy to do this. This is where I feel like I was put here. And, I still do speech therapy, and I incorporate so much of this into my, how I work with students, that I felt called to do it more and be able to provide a space where I say teenagers, because I think that's really where I'm falling in love, is with that age group. I've always worked with very young children. So for me, the teenage group is going to be a new venture, in person than online, and actually giving them the tools that I know that they need. And I'm very excited to see the progress from baseline to, when they go through these life-changing programs with me, because they are life-changing, because we are making our kids aware of so many things that I learned in my 40s. I mean, imagine giving them this power when they're a teenager.
It would change the world, obviously.
Yes, it will.
Change the world, yes.
It will. Once this gains traction, I mean, the programs I have 18 topics that I can teach them on, and there are 18 topics. Not one of them is taught in school. So there's much more where that came from. But I have a lot of individuals in my network that want to help me out with this, to teach the things that I don't have like the best knowledge on, like, wealth, management, and taxes and mortgages and things like that. So I have like a really well-rounded program that's going to be coming out where we're teaching about all of that stuff, so our kids don't get into the adult world and not know how to get a loan, or how to pay a mortgage, or how to do their taxes, because that's something that I struggle with, and it should be, every human needs it.
Every human needs it. Boy, are you right. Renee, I know we're at the end of our time, but this has been an incredible conversation with you. And I am thinking to myself, I need to go back and count how many times I said exactly, because I agree with everything that you say. And it's just so refreshing to have you say it. Yeah. Say the unspoken. It's time. And it's really interesting, because I see a lot of people know that 2024 is the end of something for them, and 2025 is going to be huge. I'm seeing that in a lot of people, and I feel it as well, and I'm really, really excited about it. So I want to thank you so much for being on here. This is the part of this job that I love so much, is meeting people like you, that you're refreshing, you speak your truth. And I think there's nothing more important than our truth, whatever it may be. So
thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it. I feel like we could talk all day.
We could. I know we could. But I just want to say to our audience, if you need to reach out to this amazing woman, I have put all of her links in the description of today's podcast. I personally would love to connect with you again and chat, and I'll be doing that. But reach out to her. She is amazing. We need more people like her. So thank you, everyone who's watching, our audience, and join me next week for the last International Change Book podcast of 2024. How is that possible? I don't know. But thank you so much, Renee. Thank you to our audience. Take care, everyone. See you next week.